Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be welcoming Jimanekia Eborn today. We are going to be talking about healing from sexual assault, so trigger warning in advance, and also about. We've got a lot to discuss today. I'm inviting Jimanekia on right now. She's incredible. I can't wait for you all to meet her. As you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section. And once we're finished asking the questions I've prepared for Jimanekia, I will happily introduce.
Hello.
Hello.
Good. I
How are
literally just sat down. I was like, "Ooh,
I? I love it. Take a second if you need. I'll introduce myself and then I'll allow
cool."
you to introduce yourself as well. Um, Alex Gambati, I'm on social media, rePROFilm. We are an organization at the intersection of art and activism. Every month we curate a free digital newsletter called The Periodical, where we curate a short film, an original podcast hosted by Ashadaya, and a number of literacy items that focus on reproductive health and justice. And
Hmm.
Jamaica, I will allow you to.
I
Oh, we're
love
so
a
happy to
good
have you on
conversation.
today.
My first convo of the morning. You get the best. I am a trauma specialist, a comprehensive sexuality educator, though I have been continuously staying deeper in the wellness space. Um, I work in true crime. I now work in professional wrestling, and I own a nonprofit called Tending the Garden, which is where we are today. And I'm super excited to have this conversation because I think it's so needed. It's always needed.
100% needed. You're a jack of all trades. That's incredible. You do so many wonderful creative things. Before we dive into today, I will say, for those of you who didn't hear me say before, trigger warning, we will be talking about sexual assault today, but we will be talking about it through the lens of healing, as that is Jimanekia's specialty. So I'll just jump right in with my first question for you, which is, in America, how does housing discrimination affect those seeking to leave an abusive relationship? That's something that our short film this month, Counterfeit Kunku, focuses on. So I wanted to pose
Oh,
that
it's
as
such
our
a
first
big
question.
question, and it touches my heart in many ways. The domestic violence aspect is that was actually how my mother was murdered when I was one. And also because I volunteer with a nonprofit in Los Angeles called Feed the Streets, where we are working with survivors that are on the streets, right? Just individuals that are on the streets. And some of the hardest conversations for me are having the conversations with women that are fleeing from something, or that are, and this is going to be a hard thing for people to hear, that are constantly in their tents just trying to stay safe because men are trying to come in their tents and harm them. And the stories and things that we hear, and the idea of people always ask, well, why don't you just leave? Because the unknown is scary, right? Like the outside world is scary. And I think that over time, people learn how to adapt to survive. I
Yeah,
think a lot of people are learn how to
absolutely.
adapt to survive, and of course the outside world doesn't see that. They're putting their hands on you. They're hurting you. Why don't you leave? Because it's not that easy. It costs money to just leave. You have to have resources, you have to have connections. And oftentimes, especially those that are marginalized and trying to flee harm, there aren't any resources, or they're turned away, or they need to have money to get resources. That's a conversation a lot of people don't have, is it costs money to get help because oftentimes the help is not free.
Right. Absolutely. And I think there's also a focus in the question of why didn't you leave, again, on the person who's surviving the domestic abuse and not on the person who was perpetrating it, which I find we talk about
I think
a lot.
you and I talked about that this week when I was like, that's my platform this year for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I was like, we need to continue putting the onus on the people that cause harm, because the people that are harmed are just
Mhm.
existing. They didn't ask for this. This person decided to put their hands, their genitals, weapons, or whatever on these people. And why aren't they held accountable? Why are we taught, how many weapons do we need to have? How many forms of fighting styles do I need to learn? And we're not holding these people accountable. How about we have these conversations? How about we hold people accountable? That is how things are going to change for domestic violence, for sexual assault survivors, and believing
Mhm.
people. Oh my God, it's such a, is that new? Is that a concept? It's, it's wild.
Seems
Like,
new
if
sometimes.
we actually believe these people, it also, for these individuals in it, having people believe you is an extra support system that people don't realize.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And it can be a way to find one's voice in a certain step in the process to be able to leave a
Absolutely.
situation like that. But yeah, thank you for answering that question. It leads me into the next question I have, which is that we know that in the BIPOC community, specifically Black women, have been over-sexualized for centuries. So how do you find that those stereotypes impact survivors who come forward about sexual assault? And are there ways that we can change that? Does it affect people's ability to believe or their
Yes.
willingness to believe, I
My answer is
guess?
yes. I think that the over sexualization, any Black, brown, non-white, I mean, and you know, them as well, but there is a higher level of, historically, if you go back, these Black women were put on pedestals so people could look at their bodies and laugh and gawk and do whatever, and they were just existing. It's shitty, right? Like it's really shitty. And the onus of a lot of us here historically, well, why were you wearing that? Oh, you were being fast. Oh, this thing. And again, it's always back on the woman and the ways
Mm-hmm.
that our bodies exist. Oftentimes in our communities, we exist in communities, so we're often helping others. We're often helping to raise our family members. We're often to sometimes raise our parents. And I think that's in a lot of areas, right? While we're navigating just existing, going through puberty, and then having people always make comments. I remember the first time someone acknowledged my body, I was like 9. That is a lot as a
Wow.
child when you're already like processing and going through it. And why don't people come forward? Because of the belief system. We have a higher chance of being questioned. We have a higher chance of, again, not having the spaces to go to report. Or if we go to the spaces, we have a higher chance of being reharmed in them. And so when people are like, well, I don't really know anyone that's been harmed, I'm like, you're alive. I mean, you know what? You're not alive. They just don't feel comfortable sharing that with you. And that is a whole nother conversation, right? Like the numbers are
Yeah.
higher. And I know personally for myself, I have been a sexual person, not because of what I look like, just because that's how my body is set up and how my system is set up. My circuit board says sex me up, right? Like, yes. But when I was raped, I knew because of the ways that I choose to live and navigate, people are going to be like, well, and that is a society issue. That is a community issue. And I think that is
Mm-hmm.
where we really need to pull back and stop focusing on the survivors and focus on the communities and the spaces that we are in that don't allow for us to feel safe enough to seek help. And now, excuse me, folks like myself that are marginalized or whatever are creating the spaces because the system has not helped us. The system has been set up to fail us. And people are like, the system's broken. No, honey, the system works. It is thriving. It just isn't thriving for us.
It's working
Absolutely.
the way it was intended to work, which is for a
Absolutely.
certain group of
Yeah.
people. Absolutely. And how taxing too that in addition to having to heal from your own sexual assault experiences, I mean, you create community, you create healing community, and that's wonderful, but it's just another step to have to pull from to heal others. But I think that it's wonderful that you do that work. Okay, so what is my next question? So speaking of healing, in addition to attending your retreat, tending the garden, and workshops, what are some ways that survivors can reconnect to themselves on a daily basis?
Honestly, it's just checking in with yourself. Before I get out of the bed, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, what are we feeling? Because your body's been waiting on you to whisper if it's gonna go well, if it's gonna go left. When you wake up, you're like, how am I feeling? For me, I also have tendonitis, so I check in. I sleep in wrist braces. I know, real it's a wonky look, but I sleep in wrist braces, so I take them off. I check in. How do I feel? What are the thoughts? And because I've had a lot of emotion this week, sometimes I wake up and I cry. Sometimes I wake up and I say, I need to be instantly grounded. I'm taking a bath. I think if we allow ourselves to check in with ourselves and not just rush into the day, that can be really helpful to figure out what you want. And then if we're just talking about
Yeah.
just being a survivor, I think that's really great. If you're talking about checking in with like sexuality and all of those things, that's another journey, right? Like again, I will say this until I would say the cows come home. I think that's so cheesy, but until my last breath, I think that conversation starts inward. It starts at home, right? Like, this is your temple. Again, I love a cheesy quote. This is your temple. You are your own star player in every game, every sport, every event. You are your star player. So what do you need? How do you want to be touched? How do you want someone to speak to you? So are they speaking to you, or are they speaking at you? Do you want someone? How close do you want someone? And those are the things that I spend time thinking about by myself. You know, everyone gets back into sex differently. I continued. I didn't take a break until I did. But for me, it was then checking in, like, what do I want? After I was able to show up and ask those questions, right? Like, a lot of us continue just going through and it's like a blur until you find the footing. And you're just like, oh shit, I had sex with that person. I did this. And then, oh my God, I freaked out and I yelled. And then we go, is something wrong? Like, what's happening if we get there? But I think a self-date, get back to that, I think a self-date is magical. I love a self-date. And you do it however you want. If whatever it takes you to feel like you can be present, if that's a bath, a shower, a dance party, a dinner that you cook or have someone cook for you. And then you get to the physical aspect. Something that I always recommend to people is the Erotic Blueprint by Jaya. You can Google it.
Oh, okay.
You can also Google yes, no, maybe list. Google that. And I will tell you why both of them. And I think they're so helpful for us. The Erotic Blueprint, there's different ways that you can show up. Energetic, kinky, sexual. And I really like those because it gives you an idea of how you want to be connected with. Like, let's give an example. For sensuals, it's more about setting. Like, if you don't have the right setting, you can't be present. That's the candles, the smells, the lights. If it's, I will tell my business, I'm a kinky sexual. I'm like, ooh, that's a little weird. Tell me more. And I can just be in the moment, right? And then there's other people that are like, they need the energetics. They're like, what's your vibes? And literally they're like, what are your vibes? Because I'm not doing this until I can sit and feel it. And I think that's really helpful when we're connecting with individuals to know what we need to connect with them. And then the yes, no, maybe list, you can use it in two ways. And I think both are super fun. Do one for yourself just to get an idea of like, where am I at? What do I like? Oh shit, I didn't know this was a thing. Let's do some research. Or you do it as a way to connect with someone, print them out because there's tons of them. Find one that works for you. I personally have one that's 6 pages long that I will send to people. But they're like, what? And I'm like, you're welcome. 6 pages. I'll send it to you. But it's like, it's a cheat sheet. It's a cheat sheet to teach people how to show up for you. And it's a fun way when oftentimes, sex is weird for people. It's awkward. They giggle. We're like teenagers sometimes. But if you can sit and be like, okay, let's exchange, it also opens up conversations in maybe ways you haven't had. And it also allows you, again, to have the connection, the sex, the intimacy that you want.
That's so great. I mean, just communicating with people, right? Getting to yourself.
Wild concepts, communication.
Wild. On these essentially like artist dates or self dates and get to know what you like and then communicate with other people. That sounds very healthy to me. That sounds great. I wrote down what you told me, and I'm gonna make that and put them in the comments of this so that you have those as research because those are great. We're going to go back to the topic we were talking about just previously with my next question, which is the problem of sexual assault is pervasive, right? So for every 1 Black woman who comes forward, another 15 don't report. 1 in 2 trans people are sexually assaulted. Those are stats that I got from your website. How do we stop sexual violence at its root with the perpetrators?
Acknowledge them, hold them accountable, call them on their shit. Hey, a lot of people got shitty friends and they just laugh at their jokes. Let's be honest. The idea of telling people it's just a joke is so harmful because those just jokes, you don't know who's around you that's actually experienced that. You don't know who you laughing has just affirmed that someone is in agreement with them that might allow them to continue causing harm. And I think if we hold these individuals accountable, and I will always go back, how is it that there are witnesses to sexual assault and rape? They get taken to court and people tell them, but they have a future. We don't want to hold them back. What does that tell people? The problem
Right.
is the system is continuously set up
Mm-hmm.
for perpetrators, because a lot of the system has perpetrators in it. Let's have an honest conversation. The system is shitty. In Los Angeles, our sheriff's department has gangs in it that are fighting each other and also going out to harm others. So if that is what you're telling me, is
Mm.
why would I think that it's not going to change? Because it hasn't. So how do we change it? We continue being
Right.
loud. We continue voting sucks, but it does help, allegedly, right? Like, I don't know. I'm going to keep doing it though, because that's my chance to have my voice
Mm-hmm.
heard. Continue correcting people. Shitty jokes are shitty jokes. They're shitty. They're harmful. They are
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah. And I know that this word is in the zeitgeist a lot, but what that made me think of is it's like a
Absolutely.
subtle form of gaslighting to say it's just because it's not just a joke. It lays the groundwork for this to happen again and people to not think much of it because we've just taken the import away from the situation and the onus has not been
Well,
put on the person it should be put on.
oftentimes when we see these cases, right, the ones that make it to the news, that make it this far, they dig, honey, with a shovel into the lives of these people that have been harmed. You will be like, this person did
Right.
this, and the person that caused the harm, Timmy used to play football, and we don't know how he got here. Fuck Timmy. Okay, we know how he got here. It was a choice. Like, the nonsense
Yeah.
of it all, the nonsensical is, let's stop keeping these individuals safe. What are we keeping them safe from? Themselves?
Right.
Maybe they should check in with themselves, because as survivors, we're often really tired of continuously creating these spaces because people don't create them. And if they do, there's harm in them. If they do, it's really
Mm-hmm.
trickery, right? Like, let's look at this as a community issue. It is a global issue. It is a family issue. If we want to pull it
Mm-hmm.
in and pull it back out, it's a family issue, because a lot of us have shitty people that are
Yeah.
related to us by blood and name. And we also have to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's where it starts. Um, okay. Everything you're saying, I'm just like, I'm taking it. I love everything you're saying. So you
Mm-hmm.
touched on the myth of the good
Mm-hmm.
survivor, right? What does that mean and how can we dispel that
Yeah,
myth?
I think the idea of a good survivor is so funny to me, because first of all, who made it up? It has to be someone that has never been harmed or in denial.
Mm,
Because the good survivor shows up, they go to their therapy, I'm constantly working through it. It's great. If you do these 5 steps every day, you can make it. That's bullshit. It's bullshit, right? Because healing isn't linear. So there is no one way that a survivor is going to look. There's no one way that we should look, because things that have happened to me have not happened to you, and things that have happened to you have not happened to me. As a human, you move through the world differently. So it's not going to equate from the way that I move through the world. So having the idea of,
mm,
well, they seem okay. Like, I don't know, they're not sad enough. Are they really harmed? You don't know what it takes for a person to show up every day. You don't know what it takes for a person to go to work because bills are due and they got to feed themselves. They might have families, right? They have people that depend on them. And I think if we look at people as people and stop trying to categorize and put this mask on what a survivor should look like or does look like, we would get out of our own ways, which would allow for more survivors to come forward,
mm.
right? I don't think a good survivor looks masculine in the idea of many people. And I think that's shitty. I don't think a good survivor looks like a sex worker, and that's shitty, because all of these individuals are harmed. They only look a specific way, and
Mm,
oftentimes it is depicted as a cis hetero white woman. Are these individuals harmed? Yes, but there's so many
mm.
other ways. And people go, are you sure? Because you don't look like this person or this idea that I've created in my head. Stop creating ideas in your head and
Yeah.
actually talk to people. That's truly how you understand where other people are coming from, is you have a conversation instead of watching all of these
Mm-hmm.
TV shows. Lifetime is not the path, honey. It is not Hallmark movies. It's not the move. Like it's not real. It's not the move.
Not
Let's be
the,
realistic here.
no,
And I think
no,
that is a part of the
100%.
harm. The good survivor. It takes away from people feeling like we are credible. It takes away from people seeing that we need help, that we need support, and the ways that we hold people accountable, right? Like if someone is harmed and they're a sex worker or they are trans, people go, well, I don't know. But if it is someone, an 18 blonde woman in college, oh my God, is she okay? Why isn't that the same conversation across the board? And it's not taking away from her.
Absolutely.
I want her to get help. I want whoever harmed her to be held to the highest level of court. But do I believe that they will? No. And that's also shitty. But yeah, I think that's harmful.
Well, totally. And I think it goes back to the thing that we were talking about before, which is believe survivors, right? Why is the onus on why didn't you leave as opposed to why did that person cause you harm? Like, why are they allowed to continue? And then it continues into, I'm reading. Okay, great. And then it continues, I'm reading the comments. It continues into the healing process where, again, it's you need to behave. Why aren't you behaving in a way that makes me feel comfortable? I don't quite believe that you went through this because of the way that you're showing up. Again, all the negative attention is really being put on the survivor here. Flip in that perspective. Yeah, okay. Last question for you. And then if our audience has any questions, feel free to drop that in the chat box while I'm asking my last question, and we can address those just after. So my last question is, after experiencing sexual assault, how can we find ways to celebrate our bodies or experience pleasure and take that next step?
I think you can find ways with being honest with yourself. And people are like, wait, what? I hate people always, wait, what? And I'm like, because oftentimes we are trying to move forward in a speed that's not for us. We're moving because people are like, it's been this amount of time. You're not healed yet. Why aren't you doing this thing? And we're like, oh, well, I guess I got to catch up. And we're not there. So how do you do it? You sit down and check in with yourself. What do you need? Like an honest question. Again, you are the star player. The game doesn't move without you, boo. Forget them. This is about you. What do you need? What do you want? What do you need and what you want, I think, are two different things, right? Because sometimes what we want isn't necessarily what we need. Like sometimes I'm like, I would like to have a lot of dirty sex. Is that what I need or is that what I want? I don't know. Like, right? I don't know. Yeah. And then I think it's the idea of what do you need, what do you want, what do you have the capacity for? Because then I want to have this dirty sex, but I'm tired. I got a backache. Yeah. I got work to do. Right. And I think there's a conversation of using those yes, no, maybe lists, talking with someone, taking a course to even just get like an idea of where you can start. And I think that's a big thing is oftentimes people don't know where to start and they're looking for these ideas. And it's the things that I've seen online before I started creating things were very vague and very much not focused on enjoyment and pleasure. And I think there's also the reminder that we often need to hear as survivors of you are still allowed pleasure. You are still allowed joy. You are still allowed connection. You are still allowed to have these orgasms, honey. You know what? And how do we do that? Sometimes it's real hard, right? I was a big mirror avoidant person up until I had my breast reduction last year. I will be 36 next month, y'all. Y'all could do simple math. That is 30 plus years of struggling to see my body. And I think being honest with myself and knowing this is hard for me and slowly giving myself like, okay, we're going to look and do a once over. That was more than I could do before, giving yourself the option to do a little bit at a time. If you want to reconnect with your body, maybe you have a little date. Maybe we focus on just touch and figuring out what pressures we like, what locations we like. And then we give ourselves some time. How did that feel? Was that triggering? Was that scary? Are there parts you were like, I now know this? And then maybe you try positions. You can lay in bed and put your leg up. You don't need anyone else there. But what does that feel like for you? And then you explore maybe different erogenous zones. Maybe you never get to your genitals, right? Like sex starts in the brain. Everyone. It's not even about the genitals. They just come with it. It's like a bonus. It's like yeah. And so I think that that
Yeah.
is such a conversation that people can have. And I think that folks always go directly to masturbation. Do I talk about masturbation? Absolutely. Do I think it's what we get to? Yes. But I think we have the check-ins with ourselves. We figure out the touch, we figure out the positions before we try to really get into these hot spots in the places that we have been harmed, right? And also make a plan. When you
Yeah.
start to start navigating what sex feels like again, have a aftercare plan, right? It's not just for kink. Having an aftercare plan, I have aftercare plans if I know I'm having a long day of work. Okay, I'm gonna have a bath, I'm gonna smoke, I'm gonna have a delicious dinner, I know I'm gonna stretch, I'm gonna hang out with my roommate, I'm gonna do the thing, I'm gonna go date my girlfriend, but I have a plan. And so if you plan to start getting back into reconnecting with your sexuality, if you plan to start trying to connect with your body again, have an aftercare plan. If you're an outside person, have a walk, or maybe you check in with your person, like your friend, your family, who you're dating, who your coworker. I don't know who your person is, but maybe you have them check in with you, right? And this is the last tool I'll give, is something that I really like, is teaching people how to show up for you as a survivor, as a human. You have certain people in your life that are like, I know this person knows where all the food is. I know this person knows the TV shows. This person knows my music taste. I go, these are my party friends. You have people, right? And they have certain skill sets, and you know that's your person. So you know that, and you trust them to do that. So why not ask them, hey, would you be okay with being one of my people if I am having a moment? Can you show up in this way, because you're really good at showing up for me in this way? Guaranteed this person's gonna go, what? I didn't even know you noticed this, right? Like, we just show up for people. They're gonna feel like you also are connecting with them and understanding them and see them, right? Because we all want to feel seen, supported, and heard. But you're helping yourself. And then how do we do that? Give them a code word. I'm a colors person. If you have a thing, say you're my person if I am stressed out and I can't focus, and you're my food person, and I text you, I'm like, hey girl, I'm struggling today, blue. If that is the thing, this is what I did for my girlfriend, and I actually did this. I made a Google Doc with local restaurants near me with the things that I like. If I text you, hey girl, I need a blue, or if I just text you blue, go to one of those things, you send it to me, because I have now told you I need help in that way. Sometimes we can't have full conversations, and all we can text is one word, but you've already set yourself up for that person to help you. So one, people want to help us. It's wild. The people that love us do want to show up, and sometimes they don't know how. So if we give them that tool, they get to go, I got to show up for my person today. And you get to go, someone showed up for me and I got the help I needed. That is wild.
Which I think is just a healthy
and you
skill
can
for
use that
anybody
in
to
many
have.
capacities. We have time for one quick story. Okay. And this is
Please.
a very hard thing, and feel free to have any response that you have. I was moving in with my best friend, and this will make sense and will tie in. I was moving in with my best friend, and I was putting things in the house, and I was going back to my old place. And I got in the car, and I had my phone was going off. I had text messages, and I remember it was my manager, my mom texted me, and a Venmo request. And I was like, oh my God, who's sending me money? Right? Because we're excited about money. And I looked, and this is where it goes left. It was the person that had raped me. It was a request for 25 cents in the year that they raped me. And that was my face. And I was stuck. And I took breaths and I said, okay, because of all this, I went spiritual before I went to therapy. Because of all the things that I knew to get back into my body, I knew I had 30 minutes before it was going left. And I said, okay, it takes me 30 minutes to get back to the other side of the city that I need to be at. I got there. I said, how do I get back in my body? Because I'm leaving it. I'm going to use my grounding techniques. We can be grounded by any of our five senses as we can be triggered by any of our five senses. So for me in that moment, it was the sight. It was the reading it, right? That feeling started to come up. Yeah. And so I went to this beautiful park and I took my shoes off. I was in it. I was in the grass. And I was like, this isn't working. I was looking at the kids running around and the ducks. It wasn't working. I tried eating a little bit. It wasn't working. And I got home and I texted my people, hey, this is what happened. I'm not doing well. And I sent it to I sent it to everyone that needed to be notified because they knew how to show up because I taught them. I had a friend that was like, "Have you eaten?" And it was a weekend, right? It was a full weekend of me not being able to fully function. "Have you eaten?" "Okay, I'm sending you something. Here's this song. Here's this movie. I know you like this thing. Here's a funny clip. Here's these things." Because I taught them how to show up for me in that moment. And we all got what we needed. They got to show up and love on me, as that is something that, as we have connections with, we want to do. And I got to feel supported when I was in turmoil.
Wow. That is incredible that I'm so glad that you have such an incredible network of friends, and also that you have these tools that you've developed to ground yourself, to know yourself, to speak up for yourself. That self-advocacy is something that I think an incredible strength of yours. And thank you for sharing all of that information with us. I've found this conversation immensely valuable, and I think that everyone who's listening would feel the same way. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much for everything that you've just 100%. I mean, I hate to transition us conversation. I do want to ask, I want you to talk to us about tending the garden. I want you to talk about the work that you do and give you a moment to just about your platform.
I do so many things. Let's go through them. The Jimanekia Project, the person that commented before, Chelsea, is my co-leader in our support groups. We have support groups for women and femmes for right now, but we will be adding more to tending the garden that matches our pillars. So our pillars in tending the garden, we'll talk about me later, who cares? Tending the garden, boop. And I'll tell you why I have this card here because I'm super excited. Tending the garden was created because I've worked in mental health for many years. I worked in all different levels of facilities and different locations. And what I saw was those that were marginalized did not get the same help, the same support that was needed. And as we've been speaking about sexual assault survivors, they don't get the same help. And so I did a 10-day silent retreat, Vipassana, and and I created Tending the Garden on the first day, which kind of sucks, right? Because you can't talk, you can't write anything down, you can't do anything. So for 11 days, I just worked on it a little bit in my head every day of like what I wanted. And so what it came out to, it was going to be a retreat for these individuals, just an intense retreat with teachers. And that was going to be the only thing. We were going to focus on mental health and sex and what was it? Reconnecting with your body kind of stuff. And it didn't work out because we were ready to go. The pandemic happened and the retreat center stole $30,000 from me and still has yet to return it. It's a shit show. Still has yet. I had lawyers, all the things. I went through a depression and like lost my hair. It just wasn't great. And then I have these people that continuously show up, and I'm oftentimes like, y'all really just be believing in this shit that I make up in my head. Okay. Are you sure? Okay. And I'm thankful for that. But now we've expanded. So Tending the Garden has different pillars. And I actually just added another one, which I'm super excited to share with you. So we have our cis male pillar because they don't get enough support. We have our sex worker platform because they don't get enough support. We have women of color, and also within there is like a mother aspect because people forget. People got kids, and there's also trauma that happens there. We have our youth, 17 to 24 more college age, because there's so much harm that happens during that time. And I don't think there's enough resources, especially like retreats and connection. And the one that I just added literally this week is our pillar for those that are disabled, because they also have a really high chance of being harmed. And so Tending the Garden is expanding to, we're also doing a fundraiser right now, y'all, if you would like to partake. It's also Sexual Assault Awareness Month, Giving Day. Give, honey, give. People need help. But Tending the Garden is expanding to, we will be having, as we build out this platform even more, support groups. I want to continue having online classes. I will be starting to finally look into, again, retreat centers, because I want to do these retreats, and they will be quarterly and they will rotate. So it will be like focus on women of color, and all of the teachers there will be women of color. I truly believe that we can show up when people look like us, right? If it is a sex worker retreat, there will be sex worker teachers there, because sex workers are more than just their work.
Mm-hmm.
They're individuals that are very smart. And if we're going to be honest, they are the original sexual educators. So why wouldn't we have them do these things, right? And so there's so many things that I want to do in this platform. And I have an amazing board that represents all of these people. Everyone on my board represents a pillar. So I have these experts on this, because I also know that I have blind spots. And I feel like other people should realize they have blind spots because they fuck it up. But one of the exciting things that we are doing that will actually be released next week is we are doing subscription boxes for sexual assault survivors. And I am super excited about this, because having something come to your door that is specifically curated to like connect with you, I think is super important, because oftentimes we feel so lonely. We feel like no one gets us. We feel like we don't exist because people make us feel like that, right? So our first box, which is why I have this on my desk, our first box is a grounding box. And there are different tools in it that connect to all of your senses. Again, everything that we will have will always connect to your 5 senses. It will come with tools. There are videos, because you can't fit everything in a little box. There will be an opening video for myself. There is a grounding ritual and ceremony that one of our board members, Jordy, has created that's in there. There's a playlist so you can listen to music while you use these tools and connect with them. And you know, you will get something every few months. And they are all going to be focused around connecting with tending garden, watering, tending, grounding. And for me, I've been waiting for someone to just do it, since everyone has a subscription box for stupid shit. What about things that matter for people that need it? And so my goal is to continue, especially with this fundraiser, y'all, it is Giving Day, to make it as affordable for survivors as possible. We pay the shipping if we can. You know, this money goes towards everyone that works at Tending the Garden is a survivor. I want to be able to pay these individuals. It goes towards allowing these retreats. In my big girl dreams, these retreats will be free for these people that don't get them. So fundraising and doing all these things, it helps. But we're going to do these subscription boxes. We're going to build more community spaces. I'm super excited about that. Everything that I do is about helping people. From the Jimanekia project, you know, my support groups there, teaching, speaking. I have a workbook for those that are navigating body trauma. That's sexual assault, domestic violence, and medical trauma, which I don't think we talk about enough. And then I now work with my friend Lenora, working in true crime, working with survivors. And we talked about this, you and I, before. Now I work in wrestling, which dream, also weird, right? Like, I get to work with people who I like adore. I love this sport since I was 9, entertainment since I was 9. But now I know and have known that mental health is so pertinent, that they also have trauma and sexual assault and things happen. And I get to do that. So everything that I do is navigating in different ways. And my brain doesn't stop. It's actually really wild on how we show up. And for me, tending the garden is just a path, not just for myself, but for all these individuals. Again, my board is representative of all of these people that aren't getting support. And so check us out. We're fun. We're a lively bunch. You sit in on a board meeting, you can't, but if you did, it's a lot of laughter and excitement, because everyone cares about this work that we get to do, right? Like, all of this work that I feel like I get to do is a privilege. Like, is it work? Hell yeah, let's be honest. It's a lot. But it's a privilege to be able to show up, to be trusted, for people to opt in. I'm sitting here talking to you and I see people are donating. And I'm just, I am excited and I am thankful. Again, that people believe in the work, in the movement of showing up and helping these individuals every day.
I totally agree that people are showing up, and that is very heartening. And thank you to those who are donating now. I'm going to link, I'll get the link from you for the donations, and I'll put them in our story as well so that people can see that. But yeah, I just want to wrap up our conversation and say, Jimanekia, thank you for your time, your wisdom, all of the resources that you shared with us. I'm gonna truncate some of them and put them in slides so that people have access to them on our Instagram later. But I just think that you're a total badass. So thank you
I
for
appreciate
sharing
that.
everything with us
I'm gonna
today.
go put together some more boxes. I, I'm gonna
Great.
put together these
There you
boxes,
go.
and they will be released Monday or Wednesday. So keep your eyes open.
And those will be at
Tending the Garden.
What website should
Tending
we?
the Garden.love.
There we
Yes,
go.
it is
Tending the Garden.
.love. People are like, what? It is. I made it on purpose.
Great. I love that. Thank you so much, Jimanekia. We're going to link all of these resources that you gave us.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.